Today's reading comes from my favorite poet, Mary Oliver, At the River Clarion. I don't know who God is exactly, but I'll tell you this. I was sitting in the river named Clarion on a water-splashed stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voices of the river talking. Whenever the river struck a stone, it had something to say, and the water itself, and even the mosses trailing under the water. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. I'd been to the river before a few times. Don't blame the river that nothing happened quickly. You don't hear such voices in an hour or a day. You don't hear them at all if selfhood has stuffed your ears. And it's difficult to hear anything anyway through all the traffic, the ambition. If God exists, he isn't just butter and good luck. He's also the tick that killed my wonderful dog, Luke. Said the river, imagine everything you can imagine, then keep on going. Imagine how the lily, who may also be a part of God, would sing to you if it could sing, if you would pause to hear it. And how are you so certain anyway that it doesn't sing? If God exists, he isn't just churches and mathematics. He's the forest. He's the desert. He's the ice caps that are dying. He's the ghetto and the Museum of Fine Arts. He's Van Gogh and Allen Ginsberg and Robert Motherwell. He's the many desperate hands cleaning and preparing their weapons. He's every one of us, potentially. The leaf of grass, the genius, the politician, the poet. And if this is true, isn't it something very important? Yes, it could be that I am a tiny piece of God, and each of you too, or at least of his intention and his hope, which is a delight beyond measure. I don't know how you get to suspect such an idea. I only know that the river kept singing. It wasn't a persuasion. It was all the river's own constant joy, which was better by far than a lecture, which was comfortable, exciting, unforgettable. Of course, for each of us, there is the daily life. Let us live it, gesture by gesture. When we cut the ripe melon, should we not give it thanks? And should we not thank the knife also? We do not live in a simple world. There was someone I loved who grew old and ill. One by one, I watched the fires go out. There was nothing I could do, except to remember that we receive, then we give back. My dog Luke lies in a grave in the forest. She is given back. But the river Clarion still flows from wherever it comes from to where it has been told to go. I pray for the desperate earth. I pray for the desperate world. I do the little each person can do. It isn't much. Sometimes the river murmurs, sometimes it raves. Along its shores were, may I say, very intense cardinal flowers, and trees, and birds that have wings to uphold them for heaven's sakes. The lucky ones, they have such deep natures. They are so happily obedient, while I sit here in a house filled with books, ideas, doubts, hesitations. And still, pressed deep into my mind, the river keeps coming, touching me, passing by on its long journey, its pale, infallible voice, singing. The cover of your bulletin shows Bingo Brook in Rochester, Vermont. It is located in the Green Mountain National Forest and abuts private land. Bingo is one of the streams who has made my family's life special. Bingo Brook is a wild mountain stream with cold, clear water that changes over the years. Some years the rocks are in new places and the pools change depth over time. All my senses feel more alive by Bingo. The sound of the water flowing over and around the rocks, the way the light filters through the trees, the icy cold temperature of the water, even in July. Some of my happiest, most relaxing moments have been at bingo. One time at bingo, we discovered thousands of tree frog tadpoles in the stream. Some had tiny legs, but most were in tadpole stage completely. Both our kids were little, and watching the little tadpoles swimming between the tiny pools was magical and entertained us for quite some time. I believe that was during COVID, when we just had all day to do whatever we wanted, as long as we weren't near other people. Our family has spent many hours playing in Bingo Brook, and we visit multiple times every summer. Most of the time, we never see any other humans while we are there. Being at Bingo Brook feels special and sacred. Next picture. Bingo flows into the White River in Vermont, the same White River that flooded during Hurricane Irene and devastated that part of Vermont. In the summertime, one of our family's favorite pursuits is driving Route 100 and finding new swimming holes. Anytime you see a car on the side of the road and a small trail leading to the river, you can bet you found one. One summer, I tried to catalog them all like the librarian that I am. Name, location, features, etc. How fast does the water move? Is there a rope swing or a rock you can jump from? Is it sunny or shady? Do we see other people there? Are there usually other dogs? Is there a beach or only rocks? Now we can easily decide whether to go to Blackmer, Peavine, or Riverbend, depending on the heat and our desires. Rivers, streams, and brooks, there's something about running water. Getting in or near water has always been a mental health boost for me, as I'm sure it is for many of you as well. I didn't grow up around here, and I didn't see the ocean more than 2 or 3 times in my entire childhood, but fresh water was always a part of my life. Today, we'll explore the rivers that made me, and I will invite you to explore the rivers that made you as well. As we know, it was Earth Day last week, and there is a lot to mourn and fear in the world today when it comes to climate change and environmental disasters. But today, I am focused on celebration and appreciation for nature, in particular for rivers. I grew up in a tiny town in western New York, fairly close to Letchworth State Park, which has incredible waterfalls and a deep gorge. It is sometimes referred to as the Grand Canyon of the East. I recommend you visit. It's wonderful. The Genesee River is one of the rivers who made me. We went on school trips to Letchworth, and my family would sometimes go there on the weekends. Being near the spray of the falls and witnessing its majesty is tremendous. There was actually a small waterfall in my town as well. Stony Creek actually hosted my 8th birthday party as a child. Imagine a group of young girls and one young mom, my dad and sister stayed home, brook slopping, that is a verb in our family, up Stony Creek on slippery slate rocks until we reached the summit. I believe we all wore old sneakers. I looked it up. Tevas and Chacos were invented in the 80s, but we did not have those. And we wore our sneakers and our swimsuits so we could swim in the pools on the way up, and that experience looms very, very large in my memories. I have no picture to depict this one, but another core memory of rivers and streams is of catching crayfish with my little sister at Lake Hiram Creek. My dad was a minister, and so we lived in the manse in our town, but my family bought a tiny cottage on a tiny creek about 30 minutes away when I was around 7 years old. And we would use yogurt tubs nestled in the rocks to catch the crayfish, check them out for a bit, and then release them to the stream. And that was hours of entertainment. Next picture. Rivers are often vacation destinations. As a child, all our vacations were to visit family. Once every couple of years, we would visit my mother's family in Yorktown, Virginia, where my great-grandparents had a home on the York River that still is in the family. What is it about a river? It costs nothing to visit a river and play in its waters. I have many memories of playing in and around water with my family. Here in the United States, there are more than 3.5 million miles of rivers and streams. Because of public access doctrine, no one can technically own the rivers, although many have tried and continue to try. I even read some pretty harrowing stories of kayakers who sometimes encounter barbed wire across rivers in some places here in the United States. But in theory, no one can own the river. As long as you can find a spot to access the river that is on public land, you can enjoy the river. All right, interactive break. So I'm going to ask for some hand raising. There's so many recreational activities that can be done on a river. Please raise your hand if you have ever done one of these. Swimming. All right. Fishing. Excellent. Fly fishing, that one gets its own because it's special. All right. Crawfish hunting. Yay. Rock skipping. Tubing. One memorable time when our family tried to tube down the White River, and it was Will and the kids tubing, and I was supposed to meet them, and it took them so long that I was worried that, I'd lost them forever. I finally left a book at the place I wanted them to get out and then drove up and down Route 100 trying to find them. Kayaking, anybody? Okay, canoeing. Ice skating. Excellent. Brook slopping. Yay. Being baptized. Anyone here been baptized in a river? Oh. I was baptized in a river in Kenya that's a story. Whitewater rafting. Anyone? Okay, not me. Getting cleaning up in a river, maybe on a camping trip. Cooling off on a hot day. Picnicking by a river. Hiking by a river and enjoying the sounds. Bird watching and photographing. I probably missed some, but that's my list. All right. Rivers are also used for travel, as a source of power, for irrigation, as a border between nations, for shipping and transportation of goods, etc. But what does the river want? According to Robert McFarlane, again, author of Is a River Alive?, the river has simple desires: to flow and to reach the ocean. Along the way, the rivers are habitat to life forms big and small. The river sculpts and erodes the landscape, meanders, shifts and moves over time, and spreads nutrient-rich sediment during floods. Humans have attempted to ruin rivers through extraction, objectification, and ignorance. Some specific ways that humans harm rivers. Number one, pollution, like the PCBs that are still being cleaned up in the Acushnet. Dams that constrain the natural flow of the river, fragment habitats, and degrade ecosystems. Here on the South Coast, Coalition for Buzzards Bay reports that dams created in the 1700s to power mills have ruined herring populations. The herring apparently used to be so thick that you couldn't see the bottom of the rivers. Migratory fish need to go upstream to spawn and reproduce, but the dam prevents that, and fish ladders are rarely successful. Some species of migratory fish that used to exist here are gone forever, including the shad, sturgeon, and Atlantic salmon. And number three, hiding or burying rivers. This one is fascinating. The Providence River is an example of a river that was buried for years and then daylighted, and now water fire happens on Saturdays in the summer. It's pretty interesting. Conservation by groups like Buzzards Bay Coalition, our Share the Plate partner, is critically important work. If you haven't done so yet, I urge you to spend time on their website reading about the restoration work they've done in our region, and then get out there and explore some of the trails, rivers, streams, bogs, and marshes that they have helped protect. A movement is growing to protect rivers in a new way, however, by granting personhood to rivers. In an article from WBUR about whether the Charles River should have rights, the author explained why personhood for nature matters. Personhood rights allow a plaintiff to attain standing, the legal requirement to show the defendant caused actual injury to the plaintiff. Without standing, a lawsuit goes nowhere. For example, a federal court in Georgia recently dismissed a case brought by an activist coalition against a developer who filled in a wetland because the groups that sued failed to demonstrate the developer's action adversely affected the people. The first nation to recognize the rights of nature was Ecuador, where the Los Cedros cloud forest is located. Cedro Rodriguez Gravito, a Colombian lawyer who fights for indigenous rights as well as forest and river rights, sees no useful distinction to be made between human rights and the rights of nature. In 2008, Ecuador added rights of nature to their constitution. Under Chapter 7, Articles 71 to 74, Pachamama, Mother Earth, is granted the right to exist and to maintain and generate its cycles, structure, functions, and its processes in evolution. Practically, this means that individuals and communities can bring legal action if these rights are violated. Ecuadorian mining companies must now prove their operations don't harm ecosystems or threaten endangered species. No human plaintiff is necessary. Nature herself is the plaintiff. Another success was in New Zealand, which granted rights to the Wanganui River in 2017, a battle the Maori people have been fighting for over 100 years. And of course, it's no surprise that indigenous people are leading the way on this. Here in the United States, there have been efforts to support the rights of nature in various communities. Tamaqua Borough, Pennsylvania, granted legal rights of nature in 2006, which was used to ban toxic sewage dumping as a violation of these rights. In 2010, Pittsburgh became the first city to recognize the rights of nature in their fracking ban. And as I said, indigenous communities are leading the way. Native American nations that have recognized the rights of nature include the White Earth Band of Ojibwe, the Navajo Nation, the Nez Perce Tribe, and the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma. Even more local, here in Massachusetts, there's an effort in Western Mass to protect the Connecticut River, and in particular, to rethink 2 hydropower stations in that region that dam up the river and harm the entire ecosystem. The Western Mass Rights of Nature group states the following as their vision: shift the cultural view embedded in our society and laws that sees humans as separate and apart from the non-human world, and nature as a commodity to be exploited at will for human need and corporate profit. Promote a different cultural view, one that emphasizes the relationships between and interdependence of all living things, and understands that if we destroy the natural world, we destroy ourselves. That idea is echoed again and again in efforts to grant nature personhood. People and nature are profoundly connected. But we always knew that, right? Think of the way you feel when you're by the river. This is all part of what Robert McFarlane calls the long overdue unlearning of human superiority. Another local example, Mashpee Wampanoag teenagers in 2023, a group called the Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors, a group of teenagers, put forth a resolution to protect the herring. And said that it was a state of emergency for the herring and wanted to establish their rights and assert tribal sovereignty in protecting them. The tribe listened, and that resolution was passed. And last August, they held the first Rights of Nature Symposium for the Mashpee Wampanoag. Robert McFarlane says that one of the ways we harm rivers is that we may not realize is by forgetting. It's a type of generational amnesia. We've lost a love language for rivers. Shifting baseline syndrome is the name given to the process whereby ongoing damage to the natural world becomes normalized over time as each new generation measures loss against an already degraded benchmark. But as McFarlane says, it doesn't have to be this way. We can reverse course, what he calls lifting baseline syndrome, and create a future in which the expectation of children to come is that rivers flow free and clear. The truth is, everyone lives in a watershed. Everyone has a river they can call their own. The rivers who made me are numerous and varied. Their names are Genesee, Stony, Hiram Lake Creek, Owaka, Bingo, White, Acushnet, Slocum, Mattapoisett. Who are the rivers that made you?